Communications Authority are overreacting, quote unquote, to this particular incident, and to some extent even defending the said presenters in this particular case, looking at the consequences that they have had to face, losing their jobs. They were suspended, then they lost their jobs, then the station now is also facing consequences. Do you think, as a regulator, the Communications Authority is overreacting in how they are sort of sanitizing this situation? Let me start with you, Abok.
Jen, it's not about overreacting, because the whole element of lack of ethos in our country is so flawless, to an extent that you can abuse, to an extent that some people abuse the president and they claim it that it is a democratic society. Now, when you have a platform that you're supposed to be educative, authoritative, but also transformative, but you end up using it to flaws and actually bring out derogatory statements and acts that tend to demoralize or intimidate others, and then the authority acts against you, I think it's a mentality that needs to be changed. Because it's also important to understand, Jane, that the element of masculinity has actually been misunderstood in this nation. And people look at it as something to dominate rather than to protect and to guide. And so I do not see the authority overriding their steps, but actually just taking an action that they would have taken even on other stations that have actually been. Because some stations today, you cannot even listen to them with their children because they do not care what they are talking about. But the element of responsibility needs to be there too, so that because there is a generation that needs to be brought up in a more ethical way, but also significant to understand that we have guidelines that protect us from all this manner of acts.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Samson. Also, another part of the population, this is something that I saw on social media. They are actually comparing what the said perpetrator actually did in this particular incident of pushing this young lady off a 12th floor and comparing him to the statements that were made by these presenters and saying that what the presenters did was a lesser evil than the actual crime against this young lady. And that brings this whole aspect of, is there a lesser evil when it comes to gender-based violence? And should one be justified over the other?
I don't think so. And I think evil is evil, from whichever dimension that you look at it. And trying to compare what they said and what was done initially, I think that is missing even the mark. Because in the first place, the incident had happened, it had come to an end, and you're kind of bringing it back, and you're trying to bring the memories back, not realizing that the person is still hurting. There is so much that has happened to the family. They are still trying to come up to terms with what has happened to the lady. And then as a media house, a person that is supposed to bring information, to bring at least to act like a judge, somebody who is supposed to put the pressures and even some of these things to perspective. And then you find such kind of people are the one who are negatively bringing up such kind of an issue. It's really a very bad thing. Those who are trying to compare what was done by the actual person and what these gentlemen in the studios were doing, I think they are, it's wrong even to do that, because there is nothing you can really compare with the wrong that has already been committed.
Yes.
So I think all of us are supposed to understand that these are family issues, and it involves people who are living, people with emotions, people who can be hurt. And of course, it is not just only to the victim. It is to the larger family and even to the society. So when you're making you're making fun of a situation that has completely wrecked a family, I think that is completely being insensitive. And I don't think there is anything that you can compare to what has happened. So
does this incident clearly boil back to the fact that in as much as we are trying to fight gender-based violence, we still do not, as a society as a whole, do not have a proper grasp or understanding of what gender-based violence is and the different forms in which it presents itself? Abok?
Nothing further from the truth, Jane. Because the way we are actually brought up, is that we are taught that the masculinity is about how vulgar you can be, or how authoritative and disrespectful you can be. But, you know, so when we are trying to change it at an age, you know, when people are grown up, you know, the Swahili says, samaki mkunje ingali mdogo, ingali mbichi, you know, and you know, these are grown-up people who are supposed to be respectful. They have daughters, they have wives, and then they can go into a radio station and a big platform and talk vulgar. You know, who is entertaining that? Does it mean that there is a clique in the society who still love that kind of thing? And you know, we do not speak out. And yet this starts from very simple element. When a conductor touched the back of a woman, and you know, no one questions about it. Call a woman a name, and no one question about it. People are seated in the mat, and you know, a conductor is harassing a woman, and it goes on to an extent that you know, it begins to be a discussion on the station, and people call in. And you know, they are making all manner of derogatory statements and comments to an extent that you know, the basic of our ethos has actually been destroyed.
All right.
And you know, we don't have it anymore.
All right. Now, as mentioned earlier, we're also going to be joined by Georgina Bera, who I'm told she is now with us. Good morning, Georgina. How are you?
Hello.
Hey, thank you for joining us this morning. Maybe we could start by just getting your thoughts in regards to this incident that happened this past weekend involving Wambui's radio.
Oh wow, I have a lot to say. So let me just break down what the three gentlemen were presented with, okay? So we find Shafi opening the conversation, talking about Achille, who went on a date in a building in CBD. Then sexual advances were made, and kidogo, the girl ended up being a cripple. Then Shafi proceeded to ask, are Chile's loose? Are Chile's too desperate? Are they too available? Then his co-host, John Palme, stated categorically that he doesn't want to take two sides, and proceeded to say, enyewe for real, kuna wanawake wako too available. Then he talked about how he pursued a lady for 6 months, and then there's another one who he does not want. It's just there in 6 seconds, giving herself to him. He concluded by saying, ladies, please, let's play too hard to get. Let's not be too available. And then proceeded to say, si vile tunatetea majamaa, but mtacha yo ufala, mtacha yo ujinga. The other co-host, Neville, who looked like he's the moderator, right? The only worry at that point in time was his relationship status not being available to Edgar Barry, okay? And he continued being the chocha guy, all right? So those are the facts we have right now. Nobody spoke about the crime. Nobody concentrated on the crime that has already happened. Some human being has already been thrown out the 12th floor of a building. Okay?
Yes.
They have proceeded to lay blame on the victim because she was too loose, she was too available, she wasn't playing too hard to get. What does that tell us as a society?
Now, allow me to just interject right there, Georgina, because on social media we are seeing guys saying that looking at what the Communication Authority has gone ahead to do was sort of a storm in a teacup. You know, they sort of overreacted, quote unquote, with the consequences that they put on the said station, you know, which had in turn already fired their presenters. They did face some consequence so far. But is it justified for a part of the population to say that the Communication Authority overreacted when it comes to the consequences that it imposed on the station, generally speaking?
There was absolutely on facts of when, for example, the first action the Radio Africa took was to post an apology. All right?
Yes.
They were later were spent 2 weeks. And then EFL, who happens to be one of their biggest clients, pulled out.
Yeah.
Then they decided, oops, we're losing money. Oops. Let us just decide to and fire these guys. I want to present you with another angle before I go to communications part. The decision makers at Radio Africa Group were presented with a choice, all right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, even if these guys were still fired, it's not the right choice. You get? Because their choice was now instigated by the fact that they were losing money. Their choice was at a peer, it's 2 weeks, now, slap on the wrist, you know? So it was heavy on them as well. Ata kidogo. Communications Commission understands fully that once you're given authority on radio, you have a lot of authority, especially on radio. And we cannot give such guys an opportunity to breeze through such a very tumultuous, such a very hard-hitting subject, just like that. You're going to set precedent that, by then, women can't be that loose. But if they were less loose, maybe we wouldn't throw them off a 12th floor of a building. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to bring in another aspect that I know I got to hear from our guests here in studio, and another conversation that is also going on social media is guys are actually comparing the consequences that these presenters are facing to the actual perpetrators, saying that what these presenters did say or do was a lesser evil and than what the perpetrator actually did to this young girl. Is this a justified conversation when it comes to gender-based violence? Is there a lesser evil in gender-based violence?
Start there. Every other thing at that particular point becomes immaterial, okay? Was somebody of a building? Yes. Can we see the tangible results of that person's action? Yes. So we're jumping the gun when we're introducing this other element of lesser evil. It's completely immaterial. Let's first agree that a crime was committed.
Yes.
It is immaterial. If she wore the shortest dress or not, it doesn't matter if the guy was provoked in one way or another. You see, when that guy goes to court, I don't think there's any sane prosecutor who's going to give him a chance to ask. So tell us, what provoked you? What about the girl provoked you to the point of throwing her off the balcony? It's neither here nor there. You threw her off the balcony. Start there. A crime was committed. Let us get that into our heads. Okay. Then every other thing we can unpack later.
All right.
Nobody is accepting. Nobody wants to accept that. That is where we need to start.
Mm-hmm. All right, stay with us. We'll be coming back to you in a bit, but let me come to a gentleman with me in studio. Let me start with you, Samson. Looking at our space as an African people, if we're really choosing to have an honest conversation about gender-based violence in this day and time, does culture still play a role in this incidents against, in most cases, we're not just saying gender-based violence is against women, but in most cases you find that the violence is against women. Does culture have a role to play in all this?
I believe so, and I believe we still have got some work to do within our cultures, because it looks like still the way we take women and the way we understand who they're supposed to be, what they do, we still have got some kind of a mentality like they are lesser human beings. So if you look at especially our African culture, which maybe you have brought, has been, the way it has been brought up and the way we have been formed and the way we have grown up. Even we have grown understanding that the girl child is lesser or is weaker, and with that kind of formation in our mind, growing with that kind of knowledge and understanding, definitely it is going to affect who we are going to be even when we grow up.
Yes.
So I strongly believe there is a lot that needs to be done. Our cultures are still against women. As much as we are already in this age, there is quite a lot. And you know, when you look at the way we are working and the way we are doing things, there is still some cultures that are still going back to their such kind of a belief. And you find like when you talk about women, we still consider them like they are not what men are. Even when you are assigning them jobs, you still find there is what we think is supposed to be done by women and what's supposed to be done by men. That at the end of the day, it tells the boy child like you're stronger than the girl child. And when you grow up with all this, it's definitely going to affect who we are going to be when we become adults. Okay. And I think it's affecting. All
right. Yeah. Now, let me come to you, Abok, and maybe we can just switch gears and just have a conversation around issues to do with consent, because that is also another quote-unquote gray area. We have seen conversations on both mainstream and social media along the lines of yes is yes and no is yes in disguise. But why do we still have those gray lines when it comes to consent, and particularly no when it comes to sexual violence against women?
Great. Jen, what's happening is actually when it comes onto the element of consent, the psychological dynamic of a relationship is demystified here, in that there is a consent ideology that men has, that, you know, they have been stereotyped that when a woman look at you in a certain way, then she is responding that she likes you, or she has given in. What people do not get to understand is that a relationship is psychological, it is emotional, but it is also physical. So as much as we are relating, we need to be intelligent in our conversation. Not that you're actually expressing what you want, and what you want is what has to be given. You need to seduce someone to something, not to compel somebody to something. And you know, there's a language going on out here, I'm a cool affair, or so you like, you know, if I give her this, I need to demand this. And you know, it's obvious that, you know, nothing comes for free. If you take my coffee, you need to understand that one day you will pay. But what you don't understand is that we able to train ourselves that we can relate we can relate intelligently and discuss intelligent things without necessarily getting on to be intimate. And for us to be able to be intimate, we have to be authentic and understand that we are intimate because we have agreed to be intimate, not because you have forced me to be intimate.
All right. Now, let me come to you, Georgina, on this whole conversation about consent, because many a times you find this conversation that when women say yes, then it's a yes. When women say no, it's a yes. You know, it will eventually get to that point of yes. Why do we have blurred lines when it comes to consent and involving women mostly?
Well, I'm not very sure I can properly unpack that, because as a woman, there are days that we're just giving hints. We're not hitting the nail on the head. Like no, you know. It's like it's like sure. You know, there's sometimes women, we're not necessarily saying no, but we're showing all signs of it's a yes, it's a maybe, it's a nini. So we're constantly sending mixed signals also to men. But at the same time now, for example, if a man is presented with a no, a man is presented now with a choice to actually take my no as a no.
Yes.
Okay? A choice. And I wanted to actually segue to the fact that
All right, let's get that sorted with Georgina in a bit. Remember, this conversation today is all about the rise in gender-based violence cases. And remember, all that we get to see on mainstream and social media is it does not paint the entire picture of the situation. We know for a fact that the cases that we get to hear are just the ones that we get to hear. What of those that go unknown? And in light of this past weekend, in the incident that happened with one of our local radio stations, and just looking at this whole conversation holistically, and also we as the media fraternity understanding the role that we have to play when it comes to setting the conversation, setting the agenda, our role as watchdogs of the society about the conversations that we get to have. In studio, we have two gentlemen as well as Georgina, who's joining us via Zoom, just sharing with us your thoughts in regards to this. I do believe we are back with Georgina. Maybe you could pick up from... All right, we'll be getting back to Georgina in a bit. But let me start with you, Samson. You know, from what Georgina was saying, you find cases of consent not being as explicit as it is expected to be, and that's the presumptions that are there in society. To what extent do you think this plays a role to some of these sexual-based violences that we see, and mostly against women?
Okay, when it comes to consensus, that is when it involves two people. Yes. And when it is an issue to do with sex, is that it doesn't make even any sense when it is being done with one person who has not consented to it. Yes. And I think what's supposed to be is that most of these issues has not been expressly been spoken about. There is so much even in our society that we avoid saying about it. There is so much into our society that many of us don't even want to discuss. It looks like a taboo. Maybe, again, it is going back to our cultures, doesn't want to discuss that kind of topics. But I think it's something that is supposed to be spoken about. It's supposed to be expressed completely. Yes. So that when it comes to issues to do with sex, it's supposed to be something that everybody knows. And we know it's no longer something that you can be shameful about. We share, we talk about it. So that even when you come to the issue of consensus, I will definitely tell you, and you'll know, I'm not hiding anything. It's not that you're trying to assume what I'm telling you. When it is a no, it remains a no. When it is a yes, it's a yes, and there is nothing about it. Okay. So that when I tell you it's not supposed to be wait until or just wait a bit, I can change my mind. And I think it's, as you're saying and or as you're asking, it plays a role here. Because men, if they have that kind of a mindset that maybe it is a no in the first place, at some point it can turn into a yes, then definitely it's going to keep pushing. Okay. It's going to keep pushing, and it may end up being what you're talking about. It's going to be violent.
All right, let me come to your box, still on the same breath. You know, from what Georgina was saying, sometimes even as women, when it comes to being clear, concise, and to the point when it comes to consent, we're also not very clear about it, and consequently we see so many cases, especially sexually based, against women. To what role do you think, you know, this vagueness that we have towards consent play a role? And also, does this boil back to the way, you know, culture has instilled this sense of fear when it comes to women, that you are just meant to be seen and to some extent not heard?
I think let me be very simple in this, Jen. Wanaume ni lazima wajifunze kukatia. Today we have men who cannot even bargain in buying their socks. So they lack languages to, you know, seduce a lady. Women get broken by words. And they got to be words that are emotionally sensitive to them, but also psychologically bring them into the understanding. But also the nature and the way the women are formalized or tainted. You know, men are preconceived. When you see a woman, you turn on, you know, you just turn on. Women don't just turn on to men. No, they can see a man. They don't turn on to masculinity. They turn on to the intelligence, the understanding that this man, the security of the man. And so you have to speak to the woman. When a woman turns on, it is not something that you will guess that this woman has turned on. If she has said yes, you will not guess that she has said yes. Because there is a way that you will speak to her. And you will see her emotion. You will see her actions telling you that this person is ready for my request. Are we getting one another? And so this is the intelligence that I train men to get to understand. But men, you don't just sit in front of the movie and you look at the movie and then you look at the woman, you look at the movie again, you look at the woman. So you think that the way you are on heat, the woman is also on heat. Now that is a misconceived ideology.
Presuming consent.
Yeah. You assume that consent is that. It's not based on that.
Okay.
Women actually turn on based on, are they secure? Are you the right person? Are they in the right place? Is because they look at issues of sex beyond intercourse. Men look at issues of sex on satisfaction of what they're actually feeling on. So I feel that there is need to be a process. And the society that we are in today, there is no process that men are actually being trained on how to seduce a lady. You're just being told you are of age, okay, go out, you hear it, people singing it, unanitosha kutoka kichwani mpaka miguuni, when I see you, my stomach run with water like Lake Limpopo, and you feel like those are the things you're going to tell an intelligent woman. It cannot work on like that.
All right.
They got to be an understanding.
All right. Georgina, I understand you're back with us. Maybe you could pick up from where you left off in regards to this conversation about explicit consent, having heard what our gentlemen have had to say here in studio.
Yeah. So notwithstanding culture, notwithstanding how a man is going to woo me, when I explicitly say no, then you are presented with a choice, okay? Let's talk about the crimes that we are speaking of currently right now are being experienced, like the victims and the perpetrators of these crimes are millennials, okay? The conversation is driven by millennials. These are people that are between the ages of 21 and 40, 25 and 41. Now, the unique thing about our generation is that we are wielding the power of choice. Okay? When I say that, is because we have already been educated on these matters. And even if our parents failed to do so in one way or another, at the end of the day, by virtue of being in this particular generation, we wield the power of choice. So I tell this man, no. This guy will decide to continue his advances, will decide to cause bodily harm on me, will decide to walk away and leave me with the bill and get frustrated and go away, or he'll decide to take my no and okay, let's change the topic, let's continue. At the end of it all, we have the power of choice. We decide at the end of the day to do with what has been given to us. So when this man, for example, threw Eunice off the balcony, he was presented with a choice when Eunice alikata kabisa. So the man was presented with a choice. But what did he decide to do? He decided to throw her off the balcony. Plain and simple.
So now, looking at issues to do with consent, how then do we start addressing them in terms of helping our younger generation understand what consent is, how it can present itself, and appropriate steps and actions to take after one has given consent or denied consent? And at what age can we start teaching our young boys and girls, from your own personal view? Georgina.
Well, thank you. I'm a mother of two boys. My oldest son is 10, and my second son is 7. Now, there was something I needed to talk about on my Instagram about educate your son. There's a hashtag actually called educate your sons, where they actually counsel out protect your daughter, educate your sons. Now, I, as a millennial parent, have the task I do. If a girl tells you no, it is a no. Walk away. Okay? walk away. Don't tell me, but why are you saying no? But why are you saying no? What is the no for? No. When a girl tells you no, dear Mbogwa, it's a no, walk away. And that is something that I need to teach them moving forward, because I've been given the opportunity, a cool 25 years to do so. So it starts from home, and that's what I'm saying. Even the perpetrators of this crime, they were taught at home. Do not for a second imagine that they never had this conversation with their parents. And therefore, that's why I keep insisting that we are wielding the power of choice, right? So we are the products of our choices.
Yes. All right, just stay with us. We'll be coming back to you as we wind this conversation. But let me come to you, Samson, as we draw this conversation to a close. Issues to do with consent and understanding as parents, we have a responsibility with how our children handle themselves and how they behave, and especially when it comes to sexual conversation with the opposite partner. Our influence as parents to our children when it comes to teaching them about consent.
I think this topic and this education is lacking largely in our society. If you look at the way we handle this issue, it's like something that is discussed undercover. There is a lot of education that is lacking in our system. When you get to us parents, you get sometimes, and most of the time, it's like we shy off from discussing this issue. There is no education. If you look at it, at home, there is nothing that is being said about it. When you get to school, there is nothing that is being taught. And I think there should be an intentional training, a well-structured training that is supposed to be going on right from when these children are very young. Especially with the parents and teachers even at school. We are supposed to begin to understand that it is something that is going to eat up our society, and we begin it as early as it is supposed to be, as early as these children are, and we begin to teach them, to train them, and to let them know that gender violence is something that they'll come across. It's something that is there. It's a big problem that we're having in the society right now. So as we train them, we make them aware that these are the challenges that are going to come, and this is how we are supposed to handle it. When you say no to something somebody is trying to seduce you about, it's a no, and it's supposed to be categorical. It's that way.
All right. Maybe, Abok, we could also get your closing remarks in regards to this conversation. My directors tell me we have less than 2.5 minutes to go. So very briefly, maybe under a minute, as we get to also sample some social media feedback. 3
things when it comes to this concern. It is important to train our young people to accept that if no is no, you accept it. And then when you accept it, the number 2 thing that you need is to adjust. Adjust to the fact that what I was expecting can actually not be given. And so I need to, adjust onto the environment. And lastly is to advance. Get on to advance that there's another opportunity, there is next time, there is another way that I can be able to do this. Because if you live in the quagmire that is either your way or the highway, then you will actually be misconceived, and sometimes you can be, you may not, the choices may be repercussional in what you're making. But when we get to train ourselves that, we can actually, things cannot go our way, then we'll be an environment that we can be able to change things. The other thing also that I want to say lastly is that sex education is something that is appropriate at a particular age. It is, first of all, important to respect yourself before you get to respect others. Let people treat you the way you would like others, you would like yourself to be treated. That is very important when it comes to men.
All right, now as we close this conversation, 2 feeds from 2 gentlemen. There's Mohia Wabema on Twitter who's saying that women don't say no properly because they are in for something. Men thinking you should not go out if you are not ready for the consequences. Plus, you should have spelled out your terms of the relationship from the get-go. We also have Chris Perry who says, you cannot have a daughter and disrespect women. How are you going to teach your daughter to watch out for these dudes if you are one of them? That brings us to a close of this conversation, but of course, we cannot exhaust it in this one sitting. We are going to be having subsequent conversations around the rise in gender-based violence here in our country and what more we can do to just cut it before it, blooms. With me in studio, we have been speaking with Fred Abok as well as Samson Thiong'o, and via Zoom we also had Georgina Bera. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making time to be with us this morning. On behalf of the Good Morning Kenya crew, we wish you a lovely day. God bless. See you tomorrow. I am Jain Wambui.